Welcome to The Act of Coaching, the podcast from Ag Leadership. We're a leadership and performance coach training company focused on developing exceptional leadership coaches for modern times. My name is Phil Askew, and each week on this show, I'll be joined by a member of our brilliant alumni, putting a voice to their very own hero's journey story. Our hope is that listening in to real-world stories of everyday people who have chosen coaching as a vocation will serve to demystify things and help you decide if this incredible vocation is something that calls to you too. So with that, let's meet this week's guest. All right, so Nick, welcome to the show, The Act of Coaching. It's really lovely to have you here. And this is a slightly different guest today because Nick is Act Leadership faculty. So it's really lovely to have you here and to hear some of your story as well.
Yeah, thanks, Phil, for having me. I'm really excited to share a little bit more about my story.
I think one thing that I always kick off with, and I know you've been a coach for a long time, and I've known you a long time too, so we've got a real connection there. Mm-hmm. For the purposes of the people listening, how would you describe your niche? Sometimes that can have people feel a bit put on the spot. I have to have an elevator speech, but you don't. But let's maybe frame it in a way of saying, like, how would you describe the people that you feel in service of, and what is it that you help them with?
I want to add something to it. It's a niche I tried to avoid for a period of time. I experimented with a wide range of niches, a writing niche, a dad niche, or a creativity executive niche, or whole range. But actually, the niche that life is always called me to is to help people work through particularly difficult circumstances where you might say the wheels have come off the wagon, or things were rolling nicely and then suddenly a wheel came off and they can't get it back on, metaphorically, and they see that there's something far more fundamental that they need to look at, something in their narrative, if you like, their life narrative that they hadn't seen clearly before, that they really need to go back and examine, and to do that in a way that is empowering, making it differentiated from therapy. That's my niche. And it's a pleasure to serve, to create a safe place for people who are perhaps experiencing some anxiety or fear that they didn't think they were going to experience because they thought the operating system was working just fine, and then suddenly a bug appeared and they're like, I don't know how to fix this. That's my niche.
It's a brilliant one as well. Me knowing you and seeing you out in the world for so long, for so many years, I've really seen how that kind of niche has taken shape and solidified into something, but it feels like that you've really arrived and it feels so like you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for saying that. I think that is part of the process of finding yourself as a coach. You adopt the mantle of being a coach, but it takes time, I think, to really find who you are as a coach in terms of what you're called to serve. And I think that's a powerful moment when you have that realization and you accept it. And then strange quantum world we live in, then suddenly clients appear out of nowhere. It's almost now you're owning what you're here to do, then clients start to appear. Or now you know what question you are here to answer. The people who are asking the question, they start showing up, which is a lovely moment. And then you really feel that you can be in the flow and in service. But it can take time, and it can be an iterative process for some people, as it was for me.
Yeah, I think for all coaches, because we're service providers, aren't we? So I think me having done some niche work with lots of clients over the years in a mentoring context, I think people are so eager to lock it down soon after their training. This is who I work with. This is who I serve. Here's my logo on my website. And they could spend a lot of money and then recognize actually once they go out and do it and walk the talk, they suddenly realize that they don't actually love those people. They might be capable of holding them and doing the work with them, but they don't actually love it. And that's happened multiple times. And I love what you were saying there about it being an organic evolution, a sort of yearning towards a certain demographic of people. And the minute you say, yeah, do you know what? I'm going to do that. And they start coming in, don't they? They start coming your way, which is magical, really.
It is. I think you're so right. I don't think there's anything wrong. You got to start somewhere. So if you've got to put up a web page and have a shot at defining your niche or defining, you might say, your ideal client, I think you got to have a shot at it. But to your point, investing a ton of cash in that, it's like you're banking the house on, it's like at Las Vegas, you say, I'm going to put all in on red or all in on black. And you're taking a big risk as opposed to giving yourself some room to experiment. And that's, I think, what I would courage, certainly. And you're right. I think one of my earlier niches I defined, maybe it was writing niche, and then people would show up and say, could you read this 3,000 page manuscript? And I was like, no. I was like,
Yeah. But it's funny because I think people's perception of coaching, it's not just for the elite, and it's not just for those who followed this career path for psychology, HR, coach. Do you know what I mean? It's like it comes from every background, or we're attracted to it from every different angle. And I suppose that leads me to asking the question, what was your early life like by way of your intrigue with people or your curiosity? Was it there from an early age?
yeah, I think it was. I take a lot from my mum and also from my dad, who had careers that involved people. My mum worked in medicine. She was an eye specialist and she worked with children. So she was particularly attentive and curious and open and able to engage people. And I saw that in her. And I think I inherited some of that. It's a natural curiosity. You have to be curious with little children to get them to engage and come down to their level. And I really am so grateful for Mum for giving me that, because she showed genuine interest in other people to engage them. And then Dad worked in sales, and was the son of a diplomat. And so I think they had that kind of like the verbal piece, knew how to talk, knew how to be articulate and friendly. You think about diplomacy and sales at both places where you have to be friendly, you have to create a warm welcome. So I think, exposed to those, and they helped inform how I started to relate to people. But psychologically, I think I got a lot more interested in people through the one subject that I was pretty good at school. I was lousy at most of the others, but I was particularly good at history. And I loved thinking about the psychology of historical characters, for example. And then I had quite a prolific kind of I was quite prolific with sports as a kid. So I was exposed to coaching through sports. And I think I was known for being someone on the team that was always the natural enthusiast. So there was this natural champion energy in me that I think maybe came from Mum as well. She's a great natural enthusiast. So I think there were elements of it there. But I think I was also interested in what made people sad or what made people nasty as well. I think I started to get curious about human psychology quite early, because I started to realize that people were not consistent, and also start to ask the questions, why do people behave the way they were? I didn't just take it at face value. I wanted to know. So that curiosity about how people behaved was always there. Yeah. It's a great question. Gets me thinking.
Yeah. Like our foundation stories, in a way, they inform us so much, don't they, of what we're celebrated for. I always remember my mum saying, oh, you're so polite, you're so kind, you listen so well from a really early age. And I think then I saw that as a reflection of love. Oh, I'm doing these things, I'm going to do them more. I wonder how that kind of orientates us towards being coaches. And so then you, at some point, discovered the modality of coaching, because it hasn't been around so many years, but you discovered the modality of coaching. And I'm also curious as to, was it that you discovered coaching and you thought, yeah, I'm going to train in this new thing? Or was it that you came across coaching as something that you could receive as a client and you were curious about pursuing that angle? Like, how did it come onto the horizon for you?
Unusually, it came out of the blue. I wasn't looking for it, but when it arrived, I knew I needed it. The long story short is my partner and I, we had two kids who are adults now, were little, and we had decided to move from Great Britain to France. And I was planning to set up a virtual office there back in 2005. So it would have been a virtual office with a dial-up internet and a fax. And I was hoping I was going to make a go of it as a journalist and marketing consultant, which was my job at the time. And I get there, and the family that had been assigned to us to welcome us to the kindergarten that our kids were going to go to, one of them was a coach. And I connected with it. And I saw it, and I thought immediately, I think I was a bit suspicious of it, because I thought, what's this? This isn't robust psychology and therapy, which I'd been interested in the 90s. But then I saw just how mobile this guy was in his relationships. He was very good at building relationships that were open and generative and sustainable. I was like, oh, I don't have that. And I'd realized that in my career as a journalist and a marketing consultant, I was backfiring sometimes in terms of building relationships. I could build the relationship through charm and getting to know someone, but if things got difficult, I didn't know how to deal with it. So my business was suffering. So when I saw this guy, I got to know him, and eventually we hit upon doing an exchange. I did some marketing for him and he gave me a coaching session, and it blew my mind. I got to see something about myself that I hadn't seen through my experiments and explorations with the therapy in earlier years, where I'd been looking for what was wrong with me and I wanted to fix it. And here was someone that was saying, what's right with you? Let's see if we can bring it out. So that's what happened at first, is I hired him as a coach to help me learn how to build better relationships in my business. And then subsequently, I like this and I want to train, because I saw that I was interested in relationships as a journalist, because I used to interview dozens of people. But I thought, actually, this is what I'm really interested in. I'm less interested in the topic. I'm more interested in the person. So if we think about the model, as a journalist, I was interested in the topic. I was supposed to be interested in the topic. I'd often get more interested in the person, and I found coaches. Now I get to be really genuinely interested in the person. So I realized quickly it was a better fit for what I was genuinely interested in anyway. So I trained, and that's the short story. It did help me initially, though. It really did, because I was suffering. I wasn't earning enough money to support my family, and the coaching had a serious impact for a couple of years in making me better at building my business, and it translated to a better ability to build an income. So before I was a coach, coaching was helping me.
I often look on coaching as something that you can do a really good job of describing it and describing outcomes and benefits and what have you, but there's nothing quite like having the experiential feeling of it, or the sense of it, of experiencing coaching, being on the receiving end. And it sounds like that once you experienced it with that guy, something went off. It's often like, for us, isn't it, like the doors open. It's like, I've experienced that and I can't unsee that. And that's something I really want to help others perceive as well.
I couldn't agree more. I'm so passionate about that. And the more I look into other areas that are of interest to me at the moment, looking at complex trauma, is that I realize that even people who've been brought up in warm and welcoming families, they're often haven't actually, no one's ever asked them specifically, what do you want, or what do you really want? That message that it's okay to actually explore that, or explore what's important to you, just wasn't something that was included in an otherwise well-intentioned upbringing, or in an otherwise difficult, more traumatic upbringing. Those questions were never asked, and I realized what a privilege it is to just be able to give someone the space. It's like giving them an oxygen mask, and you know what it's like. You offer them that space, that genuine curiosity, that positive regard about the fact that they're resourceful, and people just like, they can't get enough of it because they haven't had enough of it. That's the point. They haven't had enough of it in their lives. So we're providing something that's been missing for so long, and it's a real privilege to offer it and to receive it.
Yeah, it feels like drinking a cold glass of water on a hot day, doesn't it? When you're a coaching client and you're with a great coach, and they're holding space for you, and what we might say we're holding space, or just creating this really safe container for you to be able to share anything with non-judgment, much like a therapist might, but more in a proactive, from here moving forward sense. And I just don't think that if we haven't experienced that before, it can feel sometimes maybe a bit vulnerable at first. It's like, is this okay to ask for this, to have this? What if it goes away? This is so good.
I have some clients who come and I can see how excited they are to explore the question, what did I really want, for example, and then they freeze and they go, I don't know how to answer it. So we have to do some work on it. Actually, it's okay to not know the answer straight away. It's okay to take your time. Again, I think that's part of growing into being a more confident coach, is to not create performance anxiety in your client by having them feel like they have to answer it in the best way possible on the first session. So no, take your time. I think we have to give our clients that space. So
you've been a coach for a long time now. Is it like 15, 16 years maybe?
I thought you were going to say, is it the 1500s? Yeah, definitely.
A long time, but not quite that long. Medieval
did my initial training in 2008, and I
Yeah.
certified in 2010. So in terms of credentials, then it's 13 coming up 14 years. And
Yeah. That's
and
amazing.
training coaches for 10 coming up 11.
What have you, as you've evolved and as you've solidified as a coach with more and more hours under your belt, because you're now an MCC, aren't you, as well? You've had a lot of experience and a lot of hours under the belt. Like, how have you noticed that you've grown as an individual over that period of time? I know that you're serving tons of incredible clients, incredible humans, but how have you grown, do you think?
Not sure my family would agree, but I think I've grown as the way I've grown as a coach initially is I'm now a lot more patient. I'm very much
Mm,
about holding space, letting this session be a safe harbor for someone. Take your time. There's no hurry. This is a journey. So I think I've grown as a coach in just really learning to relax and be a lot more patient with my clients. But I think where I've grown as a person is exponential, really. With an active practice over 13 years, you're constantly getting feedback from your clients about places where you can't see yourself. And sometimes in
mm,
a really spooky, uncanny way. It's like a client might show up and relate a story that is identical to something happening in your own life or from your past, and they're trying to resolve it. And you think, oh, crap, I haven't resolved that. So you're getting that feedback all the
mm,
time that directs you to where you need to then go and look for your own growth. So I think in short, then it's made me more committed to my growth as well. And I
mhm,
think ultimately it's made me more accepting. I think I was very driven still when I began in my mid 30s, where I still wanted to achieve a lot, build my resume, which was necessary. Of course, I wanted to serve my family. And now I think I'm a lot more patient with myself and willing to take a lot longer to realize something, but to do it well. I think that was something that coaching has helped me to do. And as a result of
mm,
being coached, definitely.
mhm.
Now with my personal creative projects, instead of having 15 on the go at the same time, I have one or two, and I'm dedicated to finishing them before I move on to the next one. And that feels really
Mm.
healthy. And I think that really is thanks to coaching.
I think so many coaches, including myself, can perceive ourselves as lifelong seekers, and anything shiny and new and
Mhm.
personal development orientated can generally tend to gravitate us in, and we get excited about it. And I think sometimes because a lot of coaches are self-employed solopreneurs, no one's telling us which path to stick to and stay with this in order to be a success. And so I think sometimes we have to rope it in, and in order to get this deep sense of achievement and fulfillment from
That's right.
completing the arc of something. So it's interesting what you say, and that over the years, maybe instead of including new courses from here, there, and everywhere, it sounds like that you've really been able to hone in and refine on what's truly important for you, and then to see it through to maturity.
That's right. I love what you're saying, and maybe there's something there for people listening who are, in development as a coach. Is that to your point? There are so many opportunities available in the personal and professional development world. It can become overwhelming, and you might think, as a coach, I need this and I need that, and I got a dozen psychometric measuring tools or 360s, and suddenly you got everything but no focus. And I found that was a big step forward for me as a coach, was to really say, okay, what is it that I love? What is it I want to serve? And then I'm going to actually double down on training in that area. So it becomes narrow and deep as opposed to just wide and spread thin. And then what's happened, interestingly, is I come to maturity in some of those areas, which is particularly working with people who are hitting some real hard roadblocks in life. Now I suddenly say, okay, their new arc is opening up, and interesting. I'm just becoming interested in teamwork, which was actually right on the table for me 10 years ago, but I wasn't attracted to it, and I
Mm,
didn't want to get distracted from the thing I was interested in. So I think it's about trusting that what you need to grow into will come at the right time, but not act from insecurity ever,
mm,
or FOMO, missing out, or fear of not having something that you think you need. Really trust your instincts and
mm,
stick to growing into areas that
mm.
really serve your passion and your niche.
How do you think it's changed your personal relationships with your partner and with your kids?
Mm.
Like when you,
Mm.
prior to being a coach and then post being a coach, or learning about how to hold space and ask powerful questions and these kind of things.
I think, with regard to my personal relationship with my partner Priya, we're coming up 25 years in January. And I'd say that to some extent, coaching has contributed significantly to the health and well-being of our relationship. And I'd say if we took it away, it wasn't part of my world and to some extent part of hers because she has done some coach training. I wonder what the odds would be, whether we'd still be together. So I'd say in terms of our ability to communicate, to listen, to articulate, to check assumptions, for example, to come from curiosity, therefore, co-create the relationship, which is language that we use in our relationship. I think it's been instrumental. With the children, I think that's slightly different. They figured out quite quickly I was coaching them, and they would say, "Don't do that. Don't coach me." They knew what that was. You trying to steer away from that. But I think what it's helped me as they've grown older, and especially as they were teenagers, it helped me with regard to self-management. And something happened the other day that was really interesting is that one of my daughters had been in the kitchen and I was in the lounge just reading, and she was with her sister and her mom, and they were having a laugh. And I don't know what they were cooking up, but I think one of them came out and said, wanted to ask me a question. And I really thought they were serious, but they were joking. And I thought they were serious. And so in response, I gave a serious answer that was something that then triggered her. You know how it happens. It's like a pinball in a family. It's like a trigger triggers a trigger. And suddenly we're like, oh, there's some pain here. Something has surfaced. It's like my response to her question had triggered some pain in me. And then my response to her question had triggered pain in her. Like, phew. I think I would have handled that really badly 10 years ago. But a couple of nights ago, I was able to say, first of all, I know that we need space. So let's let things cool down. She went outside with her sister, and then I talked it through with Priya. I said, what was triggered? So we're able to uncover that, name it, get present to it, let a little bit more space. And then I just went outside and I just articulated what had happened to my daughter. And I said, look, and I just said, I'm really sorry. That's it. So I think it's self-management. It's a level of self-awareness about my own process and an ability to understand some of those hidden dynamics in the relationship that I think at least the way I was raised as a kid, those would have been stamped out. It was like, they're not even open for negotiation, So you're the kid, I'm the adult, and you do as I say, kind of thing. It's just given me so much self-awareness from a self-management point of view. Now, that story I told was a success. So there are other times when it doesn't go as cleanly, but I'd say any family would welcome. I sometimes say, coaching's made me a 50% better parent, and other parents in the classroom, they usually laugh and they say, I take that deal. And the fact that we're able to have examples like that to role model what clean communication looks like in a relationship, I'm thrilled about that for them. Because while I know there's been messy communication a lot, there's also been clean communication a lot. So somewhere there's that memory for them, that reference point for them to take forward into their own lives. So I hope they would agree.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And because you are a leader for ACT, your faculty for ACT, what would you say about the course that is significant? What stands out for you by way of content that you feel as if this is a powerful tool, or these are powerful tools that people should experience if they want to train to be a coach?
I think one thing that I really appreciate about ACT is its desire to bring some rigor in terms of theory and context to the table, but without boring people by death by PowerPoint. So if that's something I think is really appealing, increasingly today, I think it's good to know what is the theoretical context or the wider context of why we're doing what we're doing. And I think it's presented in ACT particularly cleanly. And naturally, it would be that case being a partner with Brown University. And then I think also what I love about the way the work is presented is its simplicity. It's not like an IKEA catalog approach, but it is simple in terms of we're able to break down each of the components in isolation and then put a focus on it, and then really have you get competent with that one element and then build up its relationship to the other elements over time. So I love the simplicity of it, but also I really love the warmth and generosity and kindness that is in the relationship that ACT as a company form with the students, whether that be for individual performance coaching or for the team coaching. I think it's a particularly fantastic from a customer service point of view. So there's a lot to like, really a lot to like.
Yeah. When I first experienced the ACT training, I noticed how it because coaching can be complex and deep and confusing. And when clients come to us, they bring anything, don't they? So their agenda or their topic can be anything. And knowing how to be with that, knowing how to be informed as to, so how do I be with this? How can I hold this in a way which doesn't mean that we disconnect from that human being in front of us, but it allows us to be with that person in the moment. I think that's the beauty of the teaching and the training of the ACT course. It's just allows complex, deep, wide-ranging subjects and situations to be handled really masterfully. So just to finish up, this has been a really fascinating conversation. Thank you, Nick. So just to finish up, I always ask guests, and it's a very coach question, I realize. Every time I ask it, I'm like, oh yeah, it's quite a standard coach question. Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time, given your dream and given your kind of trajectories thus far?
I noticed the first response was a knee-jerk response to my age, because I'm in my approaching mid-50s. I'm 54 this year. And I'm thinking, I want to be working less in 5 years' time. But actually, I think the real true answer is I want to feel 5 years younger in 5 years' time and be 5 years more enthusiastic about coaching and this work in 5 years' time. And I also want to be creating more. That's definitely the case. That's something I've started to do recently in supporting ACT in the development of their material, but the development of my own. I love to find innovative and creative ways to engage people in self-reflection and self-inquiry. And I want to be doing that probably 50% of my time rather than 10, 15% of my time in 5 years' time. And maybe a little bit more space for my own creativity, my writing. But I definitely want to be coaching. And it would be a pleasure if people were still writing to me to say, look, the wheels come off. Can you help me figure out what happened? And if I can be of service, then I'll be pleased.
Amazing. Yeah, I don't see you retiring like any of us. Like, how could we? When you discover coaching, when you dive into this and it's for you, it's
like it had been a life ambition for me to have a job that I loved. And I've achieved that ambition. And I'm so happy, because the first 15 years of my working career, I was like, I had some highs, but it was invariably, there were not jobs that I loved, and I had to do some shitty jobs. And I wanted, at the very least, for my kids to show that I had given it a shot at showing them that you could create a living from something you found complete love and joy in, even on a bad day when you felt tired, you know?
Thank you, Nick. Where can people find you? How can they track you down? What's the best place to get hold of you?
I have two websites. One is nickkettles.co.uk. That's where you'll find my standard information of me as a coach, some of my writing. And the other place is thresholdsofthesoul.com, all one word.com. And that's where you'll find more information about the niche I was talking about, and also some of the professional development masterclasses I've created for credentialed coaches.
Great. Lots of options. Yeah, Nick, it's been a real pleasure as ever. This isn't the first conversation we've had, and it won't be the last, I'm sure, but it's been a real pleasure to connect with you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm grateful for what you're doing in bringing this podcast to life in service of ACT and its mission. It's wonderful. Thanks. It's been a pleasure.
If you'd like to train to be a professional coach, why don't you check out actleader.com. That's www.actleader.com. On our website, we have a ton of information that can really help you get clarity on the exact right course for you. We also have articles that go into detail about the different aspects of coaching, how to apply it, and why it's a wonderful thing. Look forward to seeing you soon.